see where. Okay, we have 5. All right. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the previous minutes. Can I have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes, please?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I'm not sure who made the motion, but Bill Floyd second. Reggie?
I'll second it.
Mr. Snyder, okay. We have a first and second. Could everyone please vote? Okay, the motion passes. Minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the disposal of permanent easements to the Georgia DOT for traffic signal upgrades at Linkwood Road at MLK, Whitehall Street at Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, and 120 eastbound ramp at McDaniel Street, Fulton County. That'll be led by Robin Boyd.
Good morning, Chairman Pond, Mayor Floyd, members of the committee. If you could go to the next slide, please. So GDOT is doing traffic signal upgrades at several locations throughout our south line and south and west lines. And one of them is at Whitehall Street and Ralph David Abernathy. And if you could go to the next slide, please. And the next one was at Linkwood Road and MLK Junior Drive. And the next one, please. And this last one is at the I-20 eastbound ramp at McDaniel Street, just to the northeast of our West End station. And the next slide. So we had each of these valued, and the total value came up to $24,700 for the 3. These would be permanent easements. They all do have FTA interest, and we will receive FTA concurrence before we sign any agreements. And if you could go to the next slide. So I'm just asking for approval to be able to execute those permanent easements for GDOT.
Okay. Could I get a motion and a second? Bill Floyd moves for approval. Second, Mr. Frison. All right, any questions for Ms. Boyd? No questions? All right, I'll call the question. Could we please vote? Motion's approved. The third item is a resolution authorizing the disposal of a permanent easement to Atlanta Gaslight Company for installation of a shutoff valve at Lot 5 of the Chamblee MARTA station. Ms. Boyd?
Okay, next slide, please. So Atlanta Gaslight approached us. They have gas lines all along and adjacent to our Chamblee station, and they wanted to put in a shutoff valve so they can do testing and maintenance. And the location, the optimal location they came up with was in our parking lot 5, which is just across the street from the station, and it would be on the eastern portion. Now, that lot, half of it we use for our sand facility, and the other half we rent parking spaces, currently about 60 parking spaces to the TOD ownership, and they would need 5 of those 60 spaces. So it comes out to about 4% of the parking lot. And if you could go to the next slide, the PDK airport is just to the south of that. So this parking lot is in the no-fly zone, which totally limits what we can do. We're grandfathered in for the parking, but we can never develop on that lot because of the no-fly. And the appraised value came in at $207,600. There is no FTA interest, and this would be a permanent easement for the shutoff valve. So next slide, please. So we're asking for approval to execute a permanent easement with Atlanta Gaslight for the shutoff valve.
Okay, could we get a motion and a second from board members for approval? Bryson. Mr. Bryson makes a motion for approval. A second?
Worthy.
All right, Mr. Worthy, had a second. All right. Any questions for Ms. Boyd?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question. So on this lot, help me understand, you said we can't develop on it, but
Correct.
you said that there were some TOD interest in it right now?
No,
What is
the TOD is across the track,
Okay,
just kind of diagonal across the track. And I believe it's called trackside. And so they use this for parking for their tenants and their vendors.
all right. And so can we put anything else on the lot other than just it being blank? I mean, right now it's just empty, and it sounds like the shut-off valve will sit maybe in the center of it. And, I mean, can you do anything
The
else?
shut-off valve will be totally to the eastern side of the lot.
It will, all right.
We do have a sand facility, which is a building to the
Right.
western side, and the cars parking. We're grandfathered for those uses, but if we stop those uses, we can't develop there.
All right. Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I will call the question. Could you board members please vote? Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Fourth item is a contract authorizing, is a resolution authorizing the contract award for procurement of a letter of agreement for the Kensington Station Master Planning Services, and that'll be led by Debbie Frank, Director of Transit-Oriented Development. Debbie?
Thank you. And good morning, Chair Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, and committee members. This resolution ultimately will result in the planning team of Perkins & Will and Sycamore Consulting developing the Kensington Station Master Plan to support MARTA's application for rezoning and the issuance of a RFP for TOD at the station. Next slide, please. This is the Kensington Station location map, and the master planning effort will occur on the 35 acres shaded in purple. And I want to just remind the board that this is one of 3 master plans that the Office of TOD plans to complete within the 2022 calendar year. I know that's a bit aggressive, but it's something that we really need to move forward on in order to promote the type of transit-oriented development we would like to see at the stations. The other 2 stations are Indian Creek and H.E. Holmes. I do want to point out that the 4.8 acres just south of Kensington Road, that is the site of the Housing Authority of DeKalb County's TOD. And if you recall, it's going to be a 250-unit residential development with 20,000 square feet of office and the new headquarters for the authority. Next slide, please. So why TOD? And back in 2019, we received an unsolicited proposal for TOD here at the Kensington Station. And during that same year, the board authorized us to move forward with issuing an RFP. In an effort to help advance TOD at the station, MARTA undertook a try to advance rezoning at the station, and that occurred in March of last year, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And during that time, the DeKalb County Commission and the community really encouraged us to go through a master planning process first and come back for rezoning. So that's exactly what we're gearing up to do here. But also, this master planning exercise really allows for us an opportunity to engage the community in the visioning process and to allow for more equitable TOD that's ultimately built. Next slide, please. Our design goals for Kensington Station is in keeping with our design goals for all of our TODs. We want to see density that is relative to the surrounding community. We want to see a mix of uses. No single use should dominate the site. It's very important that we create very wonderful public open spaces where the community and people can gather. And then finally, I want to just talk a little bit about the social infrastructure that we're advancing at our stations. And here at Kensington, Catherine Durga and her team unveiled a recent mural. And we are in the permitting process for Station Soccer at Kensington, and we will be expanding the Fresh MARTA market to Kensington Station as well. Next slide, please. You know, there's planning that's going on and has been going on in and around the area, and I do want to mention that we will definitely be engaging our jurisdictional partners, DeKalb County, the City of Avondale Estates. And I just want to share with the board that what we're planning to do is definitely in keeping with these plans. There's the desire to see more density at our station. Many believe that the Kensington Station itself has the ability to be the regional activity center, creating a lot of economic development in the area. And then we want to just continue to support market rate, workforce housing, senior housing, and other services in the area. Next slide, please. I want to just share a little bit about the procurement process that we undertook. We received proposals from 3 firms, Gensler, HKS, and Perkins & Will. And the committee decided that Perkins & Will, teaming up with Sycamore Consulting, Inc., was the ideal team to undertake this master plan. Perkins & Will has done extensive planning in Atlanta and throughout the country, but I wanted to just point out some of the things that they've done in Atlanta. Turner Field Stadium Neighborhood LCI Plan was one of their projects that really spoke to us. They had a very aggressive and engaging community engagement process, and that's something that we really would like to see here at Kensington. And likewise, the Sycamore Consulting Group, they are a woman-owned firm, local, as is Perkins & Will, and they've done extensive work in the DeKalb County. Most recently, the I-20 East TOD study, and we too believe that because of their experience in DeKalb County, it will allow us to, mobilize fairly quickly and be able to engage community residents and business owners that they've grown to know and have engaged in their processes. Next slide, please. So I did include for you just the scope of work and timeline. I know from the leadership standpoint, from the staff standpoint, we really want to get this master planning process underway and done as quickly as possible. So we identified basically a 4-phase process. Kicking off the public engagement in January of this year. So we're pushing our consultants to try to complete this master planning process between 6 and 8 months. And then you'll see where in August 22, we're hoping to go through the rezoning and then issue the RFP for TOD in October 2022. Ideally, as we're progressing through the master plan, by the time we reach phase 3, I am hopeful that we are at a place where we can at least begin the submission of the rezoning application. And next slide, please. So in the end, we're asking for authorization for contract award for the procurement of a letter of agreement for master planning services at Kensington Station with the Perkins & Will and Sycamore Consulting. The contract award amount is $325,000. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. Could I get a motion and a second from the board, please?
So moved.
Mr. Worthy,
A second.
Second by Mr. Frison. Any questions?
Yes, I have a couple questions. Thank you, Debbie. I'm glad to see this type of service moving forward, this master plan that we're talking about. We are in need of having these things done, not only at Kensington Station, but at the Indian Creek Station, and I know that they're involved in that also. So in this master plan that we're talking about, I'm glad to see that we're being aggressive about getting it done. I think it's long overdue. I think Kensington Station has a great opportunity to be impactful, not only with the City of Avondale, but also in Decatur and DeKalb County communities. And I think that's what we need to see. Yes. I think that's really what our riders want to see, something that we can put our hands on that really is impactful. And so I look forward to this moving forward. In the chart that you had, the green space that you had, the 4.8 acres, explain to me what that is and how is that not in play or how is in play in this
Yeah,
plan.
so if you recall, that is the site where the Housing Authority of DeKalb County is actually undertaking a TOD.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
and so they're going to be developing a mixed use, 250 total residential units. 130 of those units will be affordable senior units. The other 120 will be family market rate. And they're also going to build a 25,000 square foot office building where HADC, the Housing Authority, will relocate their headquarters there.
Okay, great,
Yep.
great. And also adjacent to Indian Creek Station, I think it's on Kensington Road, there's development going on now, right?
Right, well, I'm not, I know that the zoning was approved last year, so
Right.
they may be moving dirt now. I
All
haven't
right.
been out, but that's
Okay.
Kaplan,
Yeah.
a private development just south of our station.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
So it's a lot going on, and we're really excited to be engaging in this process for both of those stations,
Oh,
really.
wonderful, wonderful. And then I also know that you're involved with the Memorial Drive revitalization piece also, at least the consulting company is, working with Bradshaw and that whole piece there, which once again brings focus to that part of the community. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to see these things moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from Ms. Frank?
I just have one quick question.
Sure thing.
Thank you for that presentation. It was very helpful. I did have a question about the time, the amount of time that the development plan would take to actually, that four-stage process. How long is that estimated?
So we're estimating it between 6 and 8 months. So January to maybe around August of 2022.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Frank? If not, I'll call the question. Could our board members please vote? The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
The next item is a resolution authorizing the award of the contract for construction management at risk with pre-construction services for the Five Points Station. That'll be led by Kelly Davis, a project manager with our capital deliveries program. Ms.
Good morning.
Davis?
Good morning, everyone. Again, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Floyd. My name is Kelly Davis. I am one of the project managers in our capital delivery group, and I am here to speak up. I'm sorry. I am here to ask for the resolution, approval of the resolution authorizing the award for contract for CMAR, which is Construction Management at Risk with Pre-Construction Services, contract number P46354. Next slide, please. A little bit of background. In January 2019, the board did approve a prioritization of sequencing of the MARTA projects, which does include the 5 Points transformation. We did some studies collaboratively with the City of Atlanta, Central Atlanta Progress, and other stakeholders. And in July of 2021, the board did approve the A&E design contract to the firm of Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. Next slide, please. So why to choose a CMAR? A CMAR provides a great partnership during design because bid packages can be let, components of the work can be let out during the design. That allows our progress to move forward so we can meet our deadline. It does also provide flexibility in the bid packages to meet the DBE goal. It does minimize the cost, scheduling, and scope risk to MARTA because when we issue those component packages, the price is guaranteed. So unless we change the scope, there will be no surprises. Next slide, please. Some of the key scope items for this work are the deconstruction of the canopy, the closure of the drum, which is the large concrete structure above the station. Right now, we're looking at a potential Broad Street connection, and we will be preparing the way for future TOD. It's important to remember that all this work will be done while the station is open and operational. We do not plan on, we will not impede our passengers in any of this or any of our operations. The project will be completed prior to the 2026 World Cup Games. Next slide, please. We have already met one major milestone of our schedule, which was the selection of the A&E, which again was done in July 2021. And with your approval, we are asking for the selection of the CMAR to be done in November 2021. Right now, we are on schedule to receive the full design and start the pre-construction services in the fall of 2022. and the construction will be complete in December of 2025, again in time for the opening of the World Cup Games in 2026. Next slide, please. A few additional details. Our source evaluation committee did include a member from the City of Atlanta, Kevin Bacon, who is the director of the Atlanta Design Studio. And the overall budget for this project is $150 million, which will be sourced from more MARTA funding, excuse me. Next slide, please. During our competitive process, we did receive 5 proposals, which all were deemed responsive. Our SEC members did independently review and score all proponents. Once we did that, we narrowed it down and selected 3 to come in for interviews. Once those interviews were done, the SEC independently rescored and ranked the teams. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, failed to mention, our DBE goal was 26%, and all of the selected proponents did meet that goal. So next slide, please. I am very happy to announce that the SEC did select Skanska USA Building, Inc. as the CMAR contractor. Next slide, please. The leadership team that Skanska has provided that will be working on this team is very cohesive, and they have a wide range of experience in deconstruction and construction, working in live urban environments similar to our 5-point station. Most of their projects, not most, but a lot of the projects have been in the billions with a B. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, our DBE commitment is 26% on this job, and Skanska has done a great job of engaging local DBE community, and they have established key relationships that will allow them to meet this goal. Historically, they have demonstrated success with obtaining and completing DBE work. And again, the way we will structure our packages, that will allow us to tailor work to DBE so they can come on in and they will, again, meet the goal. Next slide, please. So a similar project that Skanska USA Building built was the Moynihan Train Hall at Penn Station. And coincidentally, the A&E designer on that project was SOM as well. So because we have a team that has worked together on large urban projects before, we expect that the learning curve will not be long. They are already used to building with each other. They have worked on, again, deconstruction, reconstruction, doing working in live urban environments. The focus is always on patron and pedestrian safety, traffic control, and the station, again, this station was fully operational during this process. Next slide, please. So here are a few pictures from Penn Station. Again, a significant amount of deconstruction before the construction actually began was done at this place, where the top was removed. We have seen a few of similar elements in our early design submittals, such as the natural lighting that will allow the light to come down to the concourse. Next slide, please. Here's another effort that they worked on together. This is the Denver Union Station. Because they do provide us with Revit and 3D models, we can actually see what the future transit-oriented development will look like. Skanska and some team has a tremendous amount of experience delivering TOD projects. Denver Union Station. You're welcome. Next slide, please. In summation, the SEC did recommend Skanska to be awarded the contract for 5 points transformation CMAR and pre-construction services. The contract term will be through 2026, and this funding request is for $7.5 million. This funding request represents fees for the contractors, and as the design and the full budget evolves, we will return to the board with updates for you and ask for the construction dollars. We do anticipate that to be happening fall 2022 or winter 2023. We are asking for 3 separate options: a good, better, best. A good represents a modest design, better is medium, and best is full-blown. So again, we will be updating you in that process as it does evolve. Next slide, please. So again, I am here to request your approval of the resolution authorizing the award of contract for CMAR Construction Management and Risk and Pre-Construction Services, P46354. Thank you.
Could I get a motion and a second before we have a discussion? Bill Floyd moves approval. Mr. Worthy, second. All right, discussion, questions, Ms. Davis?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
This is a huge project that we're going to do.
Yes,
To
sir.
remove the canopy and all that on 5 Point Station
Mm-hmm.
is, I mean, and I've seen some of the preliminary stuff that's involved in just taking out all of that in the midst of us trying to run the rail system underneath all of that activity. So I know that we talked a little bit more about this CMAR. We had some briefings, I think, a few years ago when I first joined the MARTA. So can you kind of tell me a little bit about what benefits that bring to use the CMAR, I guess, platform in delivering these types of projects?
So CMAR is a great method of delivering because, again, it removes the risk from the owner. With CMAR, again, you design and you deliver as the project is going, so you're able to meet your schedule. We do something called Component Guaranteed Maximum Price, or CGMP. Say the design is still going, but we know that we need to do scanning of the stations, such as we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that, you're able to go ahead and start the scanning, so the designers can go forward with their designers are moving on, but it allows us to just break up packages, so your schedule is not elongated at the end. We'll be able to do some minor concrete work. There are several different things that we can do. So that's one way that CMAR is helpful. I believe that the largest way is that you know what your price is. There should be no change orders because everything is negotiated in the beginning. And barring any changes by us, the scope, the price, everything remains the same.
Okay, that's what I thought was the case. That was a way for which we can know what our costs would be up front.
Yes,
and not
it's a great way to
exceed
manage
that,
your
because
costs.
Now
Yes,
it
sir.
becomes their responsibility to manage within that budget, right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
Any other questions for Ms. Davis?
I have just a few. First of all, is this the first time MARTA has used construction manager at risk?
No, sir. Our current station rehab program is running under the same delivery method.
Which one?
Station rehab program?
The overall
Yes, sir.
program? Okay, I thought.
Yes, sir.
Thought so. And first of all, you said it eliminates the risk. I would caution you against saying that. It does not eliminate the risk. It minimizes.
Okay, thank
the
you. It
risk.
minimized
And
the risk.
Just be careful
Thank
of that
you.
word, because these people up here don't hear the right thing sometimes, and I'm as bad at that as anybody else. So it minimizes the risk.
Okay,
And
thank you.
The important thing to remember here, I'm very much in favor of this method of delivering this project, or probably any large project. First of all, for a lot of reasons. It requires cooperation between the designer, the constructor, and the owner.
Yes,
And
sir.
it gives you an opportunity to work together. It is not always best to provide a project at the lowest possible cost. What you want to do is provide a project that provides what you want at the least possible expense. And that's not always the same number. So I commend you all for doing this and getting involved in it. But if you do, there is one way that this project can go up in cost. We'll vote at one time on a $150 million or whatever the number is, contract amount, which sets the limit. If the scope changes,
Yes.
and that could be us changing the scope because we want to change it, or because something they found on the site changes the scope, the price could go up. So don't leave here today thinking that whatever number we vote on in August of next year is the number. It may not be. Could be, but it may not be. So anyway, I'm very much in favor of this. I commend the effort that you've put together so far. It looks like a great team for what I consider probably one of the most complex projects that I've ever been around. Trying to keep that 5 Point Station open, operating, safe for pedestrians and train riders, and at the same time get it built by 2025 is going to be a task in itself. And one of the things that is important here is timing.
Correct.
And the December 25 date is set in stone. Okay, we can't go past that. Okay, but
no,
a lot of
sir.
times we make changes and we do things, we're slow in doing things, slow in getting approval and all that. And it gives the contractor less time to build it, but we never change that end date. And that sometimes is not really fair to the contractor to do that. So I compliment you on what you've done so far, and let's stick to the schedule. I encourage you to keep this board up to date on whether you're making that schedule or not. And I think under this method, you will know sooner than otherwise whether you're going to make that date or not.
Yes,
So
sir.
anyway, congratulations. I'm very much in favor of this.
Thank you, Mayor Floyd, and thank you for that correction. CMAR minimizes the risk.
Mr. Floyd, Mayor Floyd covered that extremely well. Any other questions or discussions with Ms. Davis? Just to kind of repeat what Mayor Floyd said, this is probably the most complex project MARTA's taken on since I can remember. So it's a very important project. It does have risk involved, as Mayor Floyd said, but it minimizes the risk. The biggest challenge is going to be is to not let the project grow and grow, and the decisions you make 6 months from now could have impacts 3 years from now. And so it's really important that you spend the right amount of time up front and have everything in the budget squared away. So,
Yes, sir.
any other questions? All right, let's call the question. Could the board members please vote? And the motion passed, resolution passes. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
And thank you very much. Have a good one.
Good job. The next item on the agenda is a briefing for the proposed service modifications for December 2021. That'll be led by Richard Wallace.
Good morning, Committee Chair Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, and members of the committee. Today I'll be briefing you on the proposed December 2021 service modifications and to request your authorization to approve the service modifications. Next slide. For December 2021, we are proposing modifications to 4 routes. Route 12, Howell Mill Road, Cumberland. Route 95, Metropolitan Parkway. The Route 194, Conley Road, Mount Zion, and the Route 196, Upper Riverdale, South Lake. With these changes, we aim to make operational improvements, improve access of our transit service, and eliminate any duplicative routing. Next slide. So this table shows the type of changes for each route. Route 12 and 95 will have routing changes, while the routes 194 and 196 will have some routings discontinued due to duplication with other routes. Next slide. On Route 12, we are proposing to discontinue service on segments with low ridership, especially along Peachtree Battle Avenue, Northside Drive, Northside Parkway, south of Howell Mill Road. All buses will continue to operate from Midtown Station to Cumberland Mall. This route makes a regional connection into Cobb County, and it provides connections to Cobb Link routes at the Cumberland Transfer Center. Next slide. Regarding the Route 95 is proposed for realignment in downtown Hapeville area. Buses on the southbound trips will continue south to North Central Avenue and then loop around to layover on King Arnold Street near the library and the Senior Citizen Center. Northbound buses will return to Dogwood Drive along King Arnold Street. This change was prompted by new development and planned on-street parking on La Vista Drive, and it eliminated our layover location. While we've been operating this route as a temporary detour since August, we are proposing to make this routing permanent. Next slide. For Route 194, we are proposing to discontinue service along Mount Zion Parkway, Fielder Road, and Mount Zion Road. This will eliminate duplication with the Route 197. This will also allow Route 191 to provide faster, more direct service along Mount Zion Boulevard. The discontinued segments on Mount Zion Road and Richardson Parkway are somewhat underutilized, and the area is mostly undeveloped land. Additionally, the headways will be improved, buses running every 40 minutes instead of every 45 minutes. Next slide. In the Riverdale area, Route 196 will be modified to operate more directly along Georgia Highway 85 and Lamar Hutchinson Parkway. The loop serving the Riverdale Town Center, Bethesda Road, and Church Street and Georgia Highway 85 will be discontinued as it duplicates other routes. This area will still be served by routes 89, 191, 197, and 198. Next slide. Moving forward, on November 11th, the service changes will be adopted by the full board, and after the adopted changes, the service will go into effect for our passengers on December 4th, 2021. Next slide. At this time, I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Are there any questions from Mr. Wallace? Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace, would you mind just go over again the modifications for Route 196?
Well, I was going to see if they can go back to the slide so you can see it. Down one slide. Down one. Nope, I'm sorry, the other way. Down one, up one. There you go. Okay, so the 196, it's going to be modified to operate along Georgia Highway 85. The loop that's serving Bethesda Road and Church Street and State Road Georgia 85 is discontinued because it duplicates. We have 4 of the routes that will be serving that loop. The 89, the 191, the 197, and 198.
The 89, is that the Schofield bus?
Yes.
When did it start coming that way?
Excuse me, let me get my senior planner up here.
I think it does.
Hi, Ezekiel Guza here. That's not the Schofield bus. The 189 is the Schofield bus. 89 is goes up Old National Highway, and it branches into 2.
That's the one I'm talking about.
I think you're referring to 189, but I apologize. But there is a branch on the 89. One branch goes over to here in the Riverdale area, and the other goes, I believe it's west over to Jonesboro Road after it's done on Old National Highway. So it's a branch, I believe. So that's how it operates. I'm not sure when it started operating that way, but it's been since I started here 10 months ago. So.
Thank you. And the 197?
The 197 is the route that was implemented last markup.
Last month?
That was the last markup. That was it in the
August.
August markup?
Yeah. So part of the reason for this operational improvement is that the Route 197 and 198, they began operation last August, and so now there's more service on Church Street and Bethesda Road. So we thought that there was ample service on Church Street and Bethesda Road, as well as 197 and 198. They lay over on Church Street, so they're dwelling for several minutes. And so when the 196, which operates with longer 60-foot vehicles, articulated vehicles, goes through there's now more of a traffic, if you will, and a potential for a space constraint now that there's 2 new routes operating there and laying over. So the idea was that if we removed 196, that operational inefficiency and potential traffic that would be created would be minimized, as well as you would have folks who are riding through this area on the 196, which is a very high ridership route. They would have a faster trip as this loop is eliminated. So folks coming from the rail line going farther east to points like South Lake Mall would have a faster trip, approximately 4 to 5 minutes faster. So you'd get streamlining for the existing passengers on the 196 who aren't using this loop, and you'd have that improved operational efficiency of the potential lessening of the traffic of our buses at that spot on Church Street.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. You're coming back for a resolution after we get the next item?
Yes.
Yes.
That I
okay.
am.
Next item is a briefing, and that's the public hearing results for the item we just discussed, and that will be led by Jonathan McKinley.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairman Pond, Vice Chair Floyd, committee members, Mr. Greenwood. Again, I'm John McKinley, Senior Community Outreach Planner with the Department of External Affairs, Office of Stakeholder and Public Engagement. And today I'll be providing a summary of the results from the service modification public hearings that we hosted back in September. Next slide, please. I'll start with a brief overview. In collaboration with the Planning Department, External Affairs hosted 3 public hearings to provide customers and stakeholders detailed information about the proposed service changes and to ensure that there was an opportunity for the public to review the route modifications and, most importantly, provide feedback. We held 1 virtual and 2 in-person hearings on September 14th, 15th, and 16th. Next slide, please. The proposed route modifications that we advertised are shown here. Next slide, please. As you can see, we hosted 2 in-person meetings, 2 in-person hearings. The first was on September 14th in Clayton County at the newly built Flint River Community Center, while the other was held September 16th in the city of Atlanta here at MARTA headquarters. The hearings included an hour-long proposed review where MARTA service planners were available and able to directly engage and answer questions about not only the proposed route changes but existing service. And before I move on to the next slide, I do want to recognize board member Powers. She was gracious enough with her time to attend the first in-person hearing at the Flint River Community Center, so we want to thank her for her continued support and dedication to her constituents in Clayton County. Next slide. Due to the seriousness of COVID-19 and potential concerns, we also held a virtual hearing on September 15th. This format accommodates for those folks who may not feel comfortable attending in person, or who would prefer to view the hearing at their own pace or on their own time. And similar to the in-person hearings, an hour was dedicated to the proposed route review. In addition to Zoom, the virtual hearing was live streamed on Facebook and YouTube, and attendees were able to leave comments across all platforms. Customers could also participate via the dial-in option on their phones. Next slide. Like all of our public outreach campaigns, we deploy a variety of comprehensive tactics. For this hearing, we strategically placed yard signs along the impacted routes, emailed our stakeholders and jurisdictional partners, to which they were asked to share this important information via their networks and social media accounts. In addition, an animated video of the route changes, descriptions, and maps was uploaded to the MARTA website, and with assistance from the Offices of Marketing and Communications, social media messages were posted on MARTA's Twitter, Facebook, and Nextdoor accounts, along with a press release being distributed to various news outlets. Next slide. Additionally, outreach included station canvassing, sign placement, and literature drops. We distributed 800 flyers at key locations such as schools, K through 12 up to college, libraries, community centers, city and county government facilities. Again, yard signs along the impacted routes of high traffic areas, the busiest bus stops in terms of ridership on and off boardings, as well as near the venues. Next slide, please. Our legally required ad was published in the AJC September 7th and 10th, along with other local publications such as Mundo Hispanico, Champion Newspaper, Clayton News Daily, the Atlanta Voice, the Cab Neighbor, South Fulton Neighbor, Northside Neighbor, Gwinnett Daily News. And to meet Title VI requirements, all of our public collateral materials such as signage, ads, and flyers was translated in Spanish. And to take it a step further, we also include that verbiage at the bottom of our materials where we're saying to request this in another language or in an accessible format, please reach out to us. Next slide. As you can see here, our digital outreach game was pretty effective. Actually have some updated numbers for the YouTube video. As of this morning, the animated video that was produced in-house by Adam Shoemaker and Stephanie Fisher, we had 664 views as of this morning. And then for the recording of the public hearing, we had nearly 400. So to date, folks are still taking advantage of the videos to learn more about how the changes impacts their route. In terms of social media impacts, on Facebook, we had 8 comments, 28 likes, 8 shares, 5 likes and 6 retweets on Twitter, over 30,000 impressions across our Nextdoor account, which is where we can hyper-locally target certain neighborhoods. Our text message campaign, over 240,000 text messages sent, nearly 7,000 clicks, which is about a hit rate of almost 3%, which is pretty standard. Over 1,000 emails sent to different stakeholders, system-wide, as well as those that we targeted near the impacted areas. Next slide, please. In terms of attendance, on the 14th, in-person public hearing, we had 11 attendees, 2 questions or comments that were actually unrelated to the markup. And on the 16th, for that in-person hearing, we actually had no attendees or feedback. Next slide, please. And for the virtual hearing on the 15th, we had 18 attendees, and again, no comments. Next slide. So pending board approval, the service modifications will go into effect December 4th, 2020, December 4th of this year, excuse me. And following that, our jurisdictional partners, stakeholders, and customers will be notified using similar public engagement tactics such as route signage, station and canvassing activities, social media, and email blasts. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from Mr. McKinley?
I have one quick question. Thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. I have a question about how we're going to communicate this service modification to the ridership. If we approve it, assuming we do, what would be the process of letting everybody know it's actually going into effect by December 4th?
Right. So similar to how we push the public hearings, we use similar tactics such as station canvassing, social media pushes, emails to stakeholders and folks who represent people and organizations in the area of the impacted routes.
Got it. One other question related to that. Is there a way to let them know via the video screens or on the trains and the buses, just in addition to the social canvassing thing, can we just let them see it when they're riding so they're actually seeing it in real time?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's something that we'll.
Okay. Great. All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I do have one question. 240,000 text messages, is that what I heard, Saul?
Yes, sir.
How do you identify all those phone numbers?
So we work with an outside vendor who they collect unique cell numbers. Wanna wait?
Same way we know how to text you about political campaigns.
Yeah, but I'm only one.
We buy the list, yeah, from outside vendors who have it.
I got you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Ron? Okay. Oh, is that Blue Salon?
No, I'm sorry.
You done? Good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan. We'll bring Mr. Wallace back, and this is for the resolution for the approval for the proposed service modifications that we just covered. Richard?
Yes. Good morning again, Chairman Pond, members of the committee. In front of you is a resolution requesting the board adoption of the service modifications for the proposed December 4th, 2020 markup. This includes the Route 12, Howell Mill Road, Cumberland, the Route 95, Metropolitan Parkway, the Route 194, Conley Road, Mount Zion, and the Route 196, Upper Riverdale, South Lake. I kindly request your authorization for approval of the proposed service changes.
Could I get a motion and a second for the resolution? Mr. Floyd moves for approval.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Snyder seconds the motion. So could the members please vote, and Ms. Abdul Salam is not electronically checked in. You can vote the old-fashioned way by raising your hand. So we'll call the question for yes or no, or an abstain. Call the question. Okay, the resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
We have one other item under other matters, and it's an update for the bus network that we have a consultant engaged with, and colleague Greenwood will share an update on that project.
Thank you, Chair Pond. Just wanted to bring the group up to speed on how progress is coursing through with this program. On your desk, there's a flyer that basically outlines what we're doing, what is the bus network redesign, and a timeline in the center of it, which basically says that we're maintaining the timeline that we had first established when we came to the board at the kickoff earlier this year. What's happened in the meantime is we've had a lot of engagements with various stakeholders, people like, Midtown Alliance, Fulton County Schools, Central Atlanta Progress, to name just a few, at least a dozen in all. And we are now poised to engage in the public engagement series, which is going to start on November 9th. We'll have 4 in-person engagements between November 9th and Saturday, November 13th. And then in January, we'll come back to the public with some virtual engagements. The number and times of those have yet to be determined. And the point of all that is to gather enough public input and conversation to come back and inform the board about, what the stakeholders are saying, what the public is saying, so that you start to develop this impression of what the conversation has been like about these two purposely divergent bookends in the concept. So the concepts are, one is coverage and one is ridership. So very different. Neither of these concepts that we release are going to be the actually proposed network, but they're designed to spur on conversation. They're designed to kind of elevate concern for those that want one over the other. And the last thing we Jarrett Walker and Associates, the consultant that we're using to do this, has done this many times on an international scale, and this method is tried and true. In other words, you get people really talking about the concepts that they prefer, and quite frankly, we recognize that someone might want a coverage concept to get them to and from work, depending on where they live, but that same person at lunchtime might want a ridership concept, to get to do some errands on their break. So even within the individual, there's going to be some reckoning when we start talking about the holistic value of either side of those concepts. So the underlying message here, as we go out to the public, is if you don't see your route, if you don't see the exact system that you're looking for, don't panic. This is designed to get you talking and get us listening so that we can make an informed decision. And really, that's what we wanted to bring to the board this morning, is to make sure everyone's aware that these conversations are continuing and they're all leading towards sometime this winter when we come back to the board with full disclosure of what we've found and await some board direction on the network plan.
Thank you, colleague. Are there any other matters to come before this committee meeting?
Just Mr. Chairman, quick
Yes, sir,
question
Mayor
for
Ford.
Collie. You got a technical workshop. Do you mind telling me what actually that is and who participates in that?
Yeah, we've been having those workshops. We had those earlier in the process as well. So that's land use planners and engineers, design engineers, people who are tracking transit-oriented development and migration patterns in terms of who's working where and who's living where. So we're using all that technical data to inform, where the bus network should be going. So, we haven't done this in 40 years, and where we thought people lived and where we thought people worked continues to change. And we're doing that with a view to being sensitive to what the network's going to need to be 10, 20 years from now.
Well, those are people who are not, some involved in that are not actually MARTA people, are they? They're
Absolutely right.
local government people?
Absolutely
Okay.
right, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Greenwood? If not, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Meeting to order, please. If members will sign in. Is that everybody? Okay, first thing on the agenda is approval of the September 30th, 2021 Operations and Safety Committee meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Please vote. All right, agenda item 2 is a resolution authorizing the modification in contractual authorization for bus tire and lease services, IFB B36296. Mr. Morrow.
Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. My name is Anthony Morrow. I'm a bus engineer and officer of bus maintenance. This is my first time, so if I'm talking a little fast, just means I'm excited to be here. May I direct your attention to it's actually for the final payment of bus and tire lease services for Bridgestone Incorporated, B36296. Next slide, please. In this conversation, we're going to talk about the tire usage. We're going to talk about the background of the agreement, the final payment, how it was calculated, and then I'm going to respectfully request the approval of the resolution. Next slide, please. MARTA does not own the tires in our fleet. We lease the tires, and we pay a set rate for each mileage of usage. Bridgestone wholly owns the tires, and they mount the tires and remove the tires and provide the service for us. We average about 55,000 miles on the tires, and we consume roughly 4,500 tires per year. Next slide, please. Bridgestone has been our tire vendor since 2010. In 2021, they were not the lowest bidder. In 2015, they were the lowest bidder, so therefore they was able to continue. In 2021, they was not the lowest bidder. Goodyear was the lowest bidder. So therefore, Bridgestone's agreement ended in March the 31st of 2021, and Goodyear assumed the responsibility for our tires in April 1st of 2021. This created a situation to where some 3,600 tires installed on our vehicles wholly owned by Bridgestone, and another 666 spares. Removing all of Bridgestone's tires at once and putting Goodyear tires on would be a substantial impediment of our operations. It was just not practical. Therefore, inside of the agreement, there's a buyout procedure that puts a value on the tires that in MARTA's possession. Bridgestone and MARTA staff, we completed a tire measurement of all the tires on every bus in our fleet, and with that measurement, we came up to a value of $920,022.54. Next slide, please. Bridgestone submitted their request for payment in June. Being that it is so much money, bus engineer, we wanted to make sure that the numbers were correct. Now, this was a teaching moment for both Bridgestone and MARTA. Since we have been with them, we have not did this buyout in over 10 years. We created a formula moving forward to where we would not be put in this position again. We were able to forecast the money before instead of come in behind afterwards and ask for money. After doing that, we confirmed the numbers. Then we wanted to have MARTA's internal audit check numbers for a third time to make sure everything was correct. So we submitted our findings to MARTA Audit. MARTA Audit came back in October and found that price to be fair and reasonable. Next slide, please. Therefore, after doing an extensive review of all the measurements and all the numbers and having been confirmed by MARTA Audit, we are respectfully requesting for the final payment for Bridgestone Tire Lease Services, B36296, for the amount of $920,022.54. Are there any questions, please?
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Do I hear a motion? Ms. Abdul Salam moves. A second?
Frierson.
Frierson.
Second, yes.
Any discussion? Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rod.
Okay, so we're going to pay them for the tires that are on our fleet and in our possession right now. So what happens with the relationship we have now with Goodyear? I mean, how do we go back to them? Because now it's no longer their tires, it's our tires. So is there some way we're going to be compensated for shifting the inventory over to Goodyear? Does that
Yes,
make sense?
what happens is Goodyear, they're going to assume the responsibility of the disposal of the Bridgestone tires, and the payments, they equal out. Our first payment for the month of April to Goodyear was only $3,000 because, because we're still using the Bridgestone tires and we don't have any Goodyear tires on them. So they will assume the responsibility of the disposal of the tires, and they will come ownership of the tires to get rid of them for us. But as the payments for Goodyear, they start out very low, and then as their tires are put onto the bus, their payments will increase. So it comes almost as a wash. If that explains what you're asking.
I think Ms. Abdul Salam.
He was next.
Okay, Mayor Floyd.
I'm sorry, I don't understand this at all, and
Okay.
that's just me.
Not a
but
problem.
I don't, what was the contract for Goodrich? Who had it in 2016?
Bridgestone.
Bridgestone,
Yes,
all
sir.
right, Bridgestone. And we paid them to lease these tires so much a month, and that amount depended on how many tires we had of theirs, is that right?
Yes, how many tires and how many miles we put on their tires.
And so we sold them a check. What was the amount of that contract?
The amount of that contract, it was $10 million.
$10 million?
Yes, sir.
Over a 5-year period?
Yes, sir. And that is
Okay.
for also not only for the usage, but also we also have Bridgestone employees on MARTA property. They mount and remove the tires. They also do monthly torque checks to make sure that the wheels are on the buses correctly.
Okay. So this board voted in 2016 approval of a $10 million. How much did we actually pay them of that $10 million?
At the end of this contract, there's only $35,000 left.
So it's 9 million, am I doing my math right?
Yes,
there?
sir.
Whatever the number is. Okay, so we didn't run over the original contract amount.
No, sir.
All right, and so even with the $900,000 that we're paying them now,
With the $900,000 we're paying them now, it's a final payment for their tires. Since we just couldn't give them back at the end of the contract, we're paying them to keep the tires.
so we're actually buying these tires?
We are.
Okay, and then, I think that's what Rod was getting at, that I don't really get either, is when one of these tires gets 55,000 miles on it, what happens to it?
When one of the tires, when they wear out, Goodyear, our current vendor, they will remove the Bridgestone tire and replace it with a Goodyear tire.
Okay, so they're responsible for the tire after that, not MARTA.
Correct. Yeah, they're inside the contract, they're wholly responsible for removing the tire and also for the adequate disposal of the tire.
And if one of the tires goes flat tomorrow with 20,000 miles on it, and it has to be, somebody slashes the tire, what happens to that tire? Are they responsible for that?
If any, Goodyear will be responsible for that. If any tire has any type of road damage, and we do have those, roughly 1,500 tires a year that we do have damage to, Goodyear is wholly responsible for removing the old tire and replacing it with the Goodyear tire.
Okay, I'll get this, it's just gonna take me a minute.
No, no
all right?
problem.
All right, so now I'm beginning to understand this, and is there a rate per tire that we're paying?
The rate we pay per tire is .0115 cents per mile. So it's less than a penny.
Okay, so whatever the mileage is, how do we keep up with the mileage?
Through our FA suites, through the mileage of the buses that is captured
Okay.
every month through our computer system. And then we actually supply the mileage to Bridgestone, and then they bill us by the mileage that we supply.
Okay, all right, and I thank you. As I've said about other things in the past, not important that I understand this necessarily, it's important that I think that you understand it.
Not a problem.
And you've convinced me that you understand what's happening here, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Abdul Salam.
Thank you. Thank you. You already answered part of one of the questions that I had, which was, how are we disposing this massive amount of tires? But I think you answered that in Mr. Floyd's question. Then the other thing that I was wondering was, have you had any DBE considerations, or do we have any DBE requirements for such a thing?
Yes, Goodyear is the major tire supplier, but the service for the contract is through a DBE. It's Arts Professional Staffing is the DBE that provides the actual manpower to mount and remove the tires. That is a DBE owned company. And there's
I was asking because I think it must have been 2019. Mr. Parker and I attended the Rainbow Push Economic Conference,
Okay.
and there was a gentleman there that was a minority vendor, and was talking about how much they could save on tires. So, timely. Thank you.
Yeah, before Arts Professional Staffing, it was Big Apple Tire, and that was a minority-owned business also, and that was Bridgestone's DBE.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Liz?
Mr. Worthy, I just wanted to clarify one of the questions that Mayor Floyd had asked. With this action, you will in fact be increasing the contractual authorization from your the initial contract that you awarded back in 2016. So that's actually what the $920,000 is for, is to increase that contractual authorization.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah. Hey,
Mr. Snyder?
thank you, Mr. Worthy. Mr. Morrow, good presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Like a seasoned pro, even though it's your first time. I got just a few questions for you. First, what's the Goodyear contract value?
The Goodyear contract value, I do believe, is $11 million.
Okay. The tires that are on the buses now that are Bridgestone tires that haven't reached 55,000 miles, do we know what that quantity is? Do we have a working operational understanding of how many tires are still good?
At the end of the contract, it was 3,600.
Okay.
Yes. So from March 31st until now, do I have an accurate number of how many that are still Bridgestone left compared to Goodyear? I do not have that with me, but I can say that we don't just take tires off at 55,000 miles. We take them off when they reach the federal minimum of 230 seconds. You know. So
you mean the
thickness of the tire? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we just don't take them off when they reach 55,000 miles. We take them when they reach the federal minimum. No, it's 430 seconds. So a tire might get more than 55,000 miles, but just on average, they average 55,000 miles.
I understand. Last thing I want to ask you about is the Goodyear tires that we're getting. Is there a sense from Goodyear of what kind of miles we could average on those? Is it more or less than the Bridgestone tires?
It's going to be about the same. A brand new transit tire, you have 30 seconds of tread on the tire, and that's the average between Goodyear, Bridgestone, and Michelin. Those are the three main suppliers of transit tires, and they all come about the same thickness.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members of the committee? If not, we'll call the question. The resolution passes. Thank you, Mr. Morrow.
Thank you.
Agenda item 3 is a briefing on vehicle technical consulting services. Douglas Miller, Director of Railcar Maintenance. Mr. Miller, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Worthy, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and members of the Operations Safety Committee. May I direct your attention to the agenda briefing regarding the upcoming procurement for vehicle technical consulting services. Next slide, please. I will speak to these areas and explain why this contract is needed and the process we will follow. Next slide, please. There are currently 5 vehicle consulting service contracts for rail. One group for rail cars and light rail vehicle services, and one for bus, which would be bus, mobility, and non-revenue vehicle services. These contracts expire June 30th, 2022. There's 5 contractors, 3 for bus, 3 for rail, 1 does both. That's why there's 5. And the purpose of the new vehicle consulting services contract is to provide continued on-call technical and engineering support. The proposed term of the new contracts will be 3 base years with 2 individual 1-year options. Consultants may choose to respond to the rail vehicle services contract or the bus vehicle services contract or both. Separate contracts will be awarded for each of the selected consultants for rail and for bus. Awarding contracts to multiple consultants ensure that MARTA can promptly obtain specialized niche services, technical skills with no bandwidth challenges as the need arises. Additionally, some consultants may be more qualified in certain areas, such as new vehicle acquisition, operations and maintenance, or policies and procedures. Next slide, please. For the new car program, it is our intent to negotiate a professional services agreement with LTK Hatch to continue to provide technical support. This will maintain continuity during the design and acceptance phase for the new fleet. This agreement will be brought back to the board for approval once negotiated. So it won't be part of this contract that's going out for bid. Next slide, please. Engineering services are procured through a qualifications-based solicitation process. MARTA's Architectural Engineering and Related Services, A&E, policy governs the procurement of all architectural and engineering services, general consulting services, and related services. In accordance with this policy, the committee is briefed prior to the solicitation of new A&E procurements, and approval is requested prior to award of the contracts. So this is the briefing now, and we'll come back later when we decide who we like for you guys to approve the money and all. The selection process. Selection committees comprised of technically qualified individuals with expertise in the specific disciplines has been established for the vehicle consultant solicitation. 1 committee for bus and 1 committee for rail. The makeup of these committees is outlined in the agenda briefing report. Letters requesting expression of interest and statements of qualifications will be sent to each firm that expresses interest in the procurement. The opportunities to submit statements of qualifications will also be advertised on the MARTA website, Atlanta newspapers, appropriate trade publications, and other web-based resources as we normally do. The new vehicles consultant's role will be to assist MARTA with vehicle fleet enhancements and sustainability efforts for existing and new rolling stock to include but not limited to heavy rail transit vehicles, light rail vehicles, streetcar, passenger buses, diesel, electric, and compressed natural gas buses, mobility vehicles, non-revenue vehicles, and emerging technologies such as autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles. Some examples for rail would be rehabilitation of the existing fleet, vehicle system and component obsolescence modifications, standardization and integration of systems on existing fleet and new vehicles. To support MARTA in regional transit initiatives, including interoperability and connectivity with light rail, streetcar, and commuter rail projects. Fleet procurement requests and requests for proposal plans. More examples are in the agenda report. Some examples for bus and mobility would be bus procurement and technical support, for transit and mobility buses, bus maintenance technical support, vehicle electrification and initiative support, bus maintenance facility evaluation and optimization, bus planning and evaluation of regional expansion initiatives. And there are more examples of those too in the agenda report. After evaluation of all responses, a short list of the most qualified firms will be invited to attend a technical briefing in which the details of the scope of work for the contract term will be explained. The DBE program. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion will review the proposed documents during the pre-planning phase of the solicitation process to identify opportunities for disadvantaged, small, and minority business participations. There's typically a pretty sizable DBE in this contract. Next page, please. How this works, just quickly, we'll bring it back. The board will approve the number of years and the amount of money, and then each year we issue work orders internally to get the work done. That's how the process works. This concludes my presentation. I will respectfully turn it back over to Chairman Worthy for any questions.
Mr. Miller, thank you so much. Appreciate that briefing. Any questions from members of the committee?
What is the amount we're looking for here? I mean, annual?
Well, it's going to change because the new car's separated out of it. So this contract, geez, you're putting me on the spot here now to do math.
That's what I was trying to do, yeah.
Math in my head. But the last one with the new car in it, I think when we brought it to the board last month was around $30 million or so for both.
Annually or over the life, over the 5 years?
Over the 5 years, yeah. It's something in that order of magnitude.
Okay.
It changes year to year based on the needs of the authority. So the new car coming out of this will make this contract a smaller portion of it.
I'm writing that down so I'll remember to ask you about that.
Any other questions from the members of the committee? Mr. Miller, thank you very much. Agenda item number 4 is a briefing on our sustainability highlights, looking back to move forward. Ms. Lester, welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Worthy. Good morning, Vice Chair Abdul Salam, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. McKinney, and the members of the Operations and Safety Committee. My name is Karen Lester. I work in the Department of Safety and Quality Assurance. I'm the program manager for MARTA's ISO 14001 program. And I also sit on the Sustainability, APTA Sustainability Steering Committee, and I chair a working group within the APTA Sustainability Committee for Environmental Management. So I'm pleased to be here today to talk to you about sustainability highlights at MARTA, looking back to move forward. So sustainability is a buzzword these days. We hear it a lot of times. So I'd like to start by defining sustainability in a way that is the capacity to endure across various domains of life in general. And this is evident in MARTA's mission statement: advocate and provide safe, multimodal transit services that advance prosperity, connectivity, and equity for a livable region. So as we go through this and you think about the mission statement, you will see aspects that tie this all together in one big sustainability word. Next slide, please. So first, let's talk about why we even do sustainability, how we even got involved in this, and it was with regards to an APTA sustainability commitment. That commitment allows us to set goals, short-term, long-term goals, and as we achieve certain goals, based on a set of core principles set forth by APTA, such as the reduction of waste, the reduction of greenhouse gases, for instance. But these things would be accomplished through these goals, and they're common to all transit authorities and businesses that signed on to the APTA sustainability commitment in the beginning, as MARTA did. So with these achievements that we make yearly, we eventually submit forms to APTA showing our progress, and based on our progress, we receive awards. Now, MARTA has received its Gold APTA Sustainability Award this year, and Mr. Parker will accept that award down in Orlando this year. So, main reason, I guess, for this is to give you a briefing on that. So, next slide, please. So this right here is really MARTA's road to the gold. It started in 2009 when we became a signatory to the original commitment. It took us a few years, till 2012, to establish baselines for the majority of the metrics that were in the commitment. and also additional ones that we felt were sustainable goals that MARTA could achieve. In 2015, we were awarded the bronze medal, and in 2018, we achieved the silver medal. In 2018, we also started the annual sustainability report that you can find on itsmarta.com. In 2019, we released the second one, and in 2021, we released the third one, which was the 2020 sustainability report. It does take a little bit to gather all the data and put the report together for the year previous, but we also achieved the gold award. Next slide, please. So, APTA defines sustainability as preserving the environment, maintaining economic vitality, producing overall contributions to life in general for the transit areas that MARTA serves. So that's how we look at sustainability, and we look at it within these three pillars. So the next slide, please. So we'll discuss the three pillars just in general concepts so that you understand and can see how sustainability is a very big picture at MARTA. So we do have the ISO 14001 program. Currently, we have 9 maintenance and ancillary facilities that are certified to ISO. This was a really big push. This was accomplished in about 3.5 years. We got all these 9 facilities part of this ISO program. We have a mixed fleet of buses. So we've got the CNG and the clean burning diesel. They're great for the environment. And now we're bringing on the electric buses. So here we go. We're a new mode of transportation. We have bus and rail wash water recycling systems. So for instance, it takes about 200 gallons to wash a bus. So we recycle all that water. We have an industrial wastewater treatment plant at our bus maintenance facilities that actually clean the water so that we can reuse it. And we'll keep reusing it until the time when it's time to divert it. But the recycling processes at MARTA save us so much money every year in water. And at Armour Yard, where they have the train wash, they use probably less water than I use in my household every year, washing all the trains, because they have a really robust industrial wastewater treatment plant. So that is a really great way to save money and very sustainable. We also have rail car refurbishing projects that are going on. We're also bringing in new cars as well that will be more environmentally friendly, even during the building process. And we have other recycling projects going on at MARTA. So MARTA has historically recycled the metal. So we do a really good job of recycling metal, and we have lots of metal. One of the newest things that we've begun recycling is fiberglass. Fiberglass is one of those products that would never leave a landfill. It would never disintegrate. And so we were contacted by a fiberglass recycling company, and we have begun to work with them. So you may think, where's fiberglass at MARTA? When you walk through a train station, the majority of the wayfinding signage is fiberglass. The seats on the trains, fiberglass. The majority of the inside of the train, the panels and things, are also fiberglass. So we may be able to recycle this. This is a brand new avenue for us. It doesn't cost us anything. We're allowing the company to bring dumpsters. They supply the dumpsters, and all we're doing is sort, basically. So a very good new waste stream that we're finding. So the next slide, please. Social sustainability, I know that you have been briefed on all of these things up here. I wanted to show these because they bring in an element of sustainability that you may not have thought would be considered sustainable. So sustainability at MARTA works through all of our lives, really, and all of our divisions. So things like the COVID-19 support, sustainable because we actually had vaccination sites set up at our train stations. We also had testing at our train stations. This helped people that didn't have a way to get to a drugstore or to their doctor. They could just go to our train station, which was natural for them. The MARTA Hope Project, during these times of COVID, we had a lot of transient people that really took refuge in our stations. And this project really helped people socially get out of their predicament, help them get services that we were allowed to offer through this HOPE project that MARTA, worked with. The fresh markets, obviously, very sustainable, getting people the fresh fruits and vegetables on their way home that they need. The TODs, centering around communities and allowing people to use our transit system to move from community to community, very, very vital to social sustainability. The soccer stations are just way cool. They're cool. It's great to see people out together, building teams from all different neighborhoods. And I hear eventually they're going to be having tournaments where one station will play another station. And electric vehicle charging stations, we put those in to help people get used to using their electric vehicles to get to a train. So we're giving them that charging power. And then we have increased and improved bus shelters. And I have one near my house that services an elderly high-rise facility where now it's lit, it's covered, they have a nice bench to sit on, and it's just very nice to see in an older community. Next slide, please. And economic sustainability. So we all care about the money, and as I said before, we do a lot of recycling, and we do a lot of water diversion. Some of the other things that we do, we have these energy efficiency projects going on where we're refurbishing our old buildings. We're putting in new AC units. We're putting in new lights. We're getting rid of fluorescent lamps that were bad for the environment. We're using LED, which were much more friendly. And eventually, estimates show that 20 to 25% savings will be achieved when we're through with these projects at the building. So very sustainable. The Laredo solar panels, they were built in 2012 through a Tiger grant, and they are absolutely working today. They supply that facility with 1.2 megawatts of renewable, truly green energy from the sun to that facility, and what we have left over, we can sell back to the grid. We have something called the halon fire suppression agent. It was an old school suppression agent that would come out of the ceilings like the water, but not. And it was really bad for the environment. It was extremely hazardous to the ozone. So as we redo our fire suppression systems, we're changing out that agent. And there's actually a federal bank that buys the old suppression agent, halon. And MARTA netted $240,000 in FY20, and we still have more to sell. So very good thing. And then the bottom one might be interesting to you as an economic sustainability. For Clayton County and other expansion efforts that MARTA is enduring and growing, these are economic sustainability for the people that we serve. And that is considered being part of MARTA's sustainability efforts. So as you see, between these three pillars, MARTA is crossing the lines of being environmentally, social, and economically sustainable in many ways that you may not have actually ever realized. So with that, I'm not asking for any money or anything, just wanted to bring you some good news, especially the Gold Award that we'll be receiving. And thank you. And are there any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lester. Any questions? I think I saw Ms. Abdul Salam first.
Thank you for the presentation. Very informative.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, because it's something I worked on since the legislature, how many other facilities does MARTA currently have that's utilizing solar panels?
None,
Just
just
the one?
Laredo. Yes,
And that's a
ma'am.
demonstration project? Are we planning more?
Not to my knowledge, but that's just to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Pond.
Thank you. Great presentation,
Thank
very
you.
informative. Just wanted to commend you for being out front on all these issues, such as the recycling and energy HVAC lighting. So I know that lighting program went back to start in 2010 or 12, as I recall.
Yeah.
Maybe before then.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
So thank you.
Mayor Floyd.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. Obviously, there's a market for fiberglass
Yes.
somewhere to do something with. I'd like to know a little bit about more what this guy that picks it up is going to do with it, and
Okay.
but and then I have the same question about what do they do with this halon gas when they take it off. And I asked this question because I know glass is still not a very good market, recycling glass. And as a matter of fact, one time we had the experience of having somebody pick up the glass, and all they did was take it to the dump
You're
and
right.
dump it. So
Yes.
what do you do to make sure that whatever's done with the fiberglass or the halon is actually recyclable and not just
I
gotten rid of?
understand. Yeah. Okay, so with regards to the fiberglass, we visit the company. They're actually in Ball Ground, Georgia. Their process is they actually take the fiberglass and they shred it, very similar to shredding paper. And then it gets loaded onto barges, and whether we like it or not, it gets shipped to China. So it becomes a product that we're actually shipping to China, or that company is. And then they reuse it, because fiberglass is completely renewable. So they would use it for, their cars. They're all made out of fiberglass now, pretty much, cars are. Anyway, so they would reuse it for things like that. So it is reusable in that respect. There are very few companies that I know of in the United States that actually do this recycling of fiberglass. This company's main I guess, way that they were recycling fiberglass came from the big barges down in Savannah. So they also have a plant down, they do this in Savannah. They recycle boats. So, you wreck your high-speed boat, and you can't do anything with it. They recycle all that fiberglass. So if that answers your question.
It does, but they don't pay us anything, Marty, anything for that.
No,
But they
sir.
obviously are getting paid
They get
somewhere.
paid on the back end, but
Okay.
they also have to do all the shredding and all that stuff.
Okay. Thank
Okay?
you.
So it's very similar to metal. MARTA gets paid for metal only when it's pure, if we, but it does have to still be processed. But it does allow us to recycle something. It's like our efforts that we do at home. I don't get paid to recycle my plastic, but it's the great thing to do for the earth, right? So that's sort of the way that we can look at it sustainability-wise. And your other question had to do with the halon. The halon goes to a federal bank type of system. And for people that cannot afford to revamp their whole fire suppression system, and they used halon, they're able to buy the halon if they had a discharge. So if a building, if a building released the fire sprinkler system that was halon, then they would be able to refurbish it, because it just comes in big tanks. So they'd be able to replace the tank. And so it's economically a sustainable thing.
And what are
We
we
don't
using-
produce halon anymore.
What are we using instead of halon?
There's another clean agent, and I'm not quite sure what that clean agent is, but it is much more environmentally friendly than halon ever was. And we use
Is
it.
there a difference in the cost?
I do not know that, because that would be a budget for building and support, not me.
Okay, thank
This
you.
was a building and support effort for the halon. So,
Any other questions? Ms. Lester, thank you so very much for that informative presentation. I direct members of the committee to their packet. Informational only item in there, FY22 August KPIs. And if there's no other business to come before Ops and Safety, I will adjourn this meeting and we'll move on. Ms. Mullinax.
Sorry, Chairman Worthy, I just wanted to update the board real quick. We actually have a study on more solar for the buildings that we had real estate do. So the study's finished, and there are opportunities for canopies at Armour Yards and at Avondale, which we're looking at. And we've been in discussions with the City of Atlanta about their a recent P3 that they announced. So we're working on that to try to move more. Ms. Roberta, thank you.
Sure. Ms. Abdul Salam.
Yeah, just want to address Mr. Flores' question about the halon. The new agent that's developed, I'm not sure if MARTA uses it, but it's FM 200, and it was developed by DuPont. It's a clean agent.
Ms. Abdul Salam.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I may take a moment of personal privilege, for those of you board members that are attending the APTA events next weekend, one of the things that I'm tasked with is taking back feedback from the large transit systems in our southeastern region. So of course, if there's any feedback that you can share with me, if there's any questions that you've got, we'll report out on Sunday afternoon. So I just want to make that while we're here, and I'll try to give everybody a call.
Sounds great. Thank you, Ms. Abdul-Salam. Any other business before ops and safety? All right, we'll adjourn this one and go into planning and capital programs. Business management, sorry.
Can I get my board members ready to register? Okay. Thank you very much. All right, the first item on the agenda we have is approval of the September 30th, 2021 Business Management Committee meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved by Ms. Abdul Salam,
I'll
second by
second the
Mr. Snyder. All right. Any questions? Hearing none, I call the question. Can the members vote on it? Okay. All right, thank you. The meeting minutes have been confirmed. First item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a single-source contract for 8 parking deck car box upgrade and calling services, RFPP P49632. Tori Kerbert, Director of Technology and Applications. You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, or is it afternoon? Good morning. Chairman Frierson, Mr. Parker, Mr. Srinath, BMC committee, as well as MARTA employees and guests. I, Tori Kirby, Director of Technology Applications, am seeking your approval to authorize the initiation of a new single-source contractual agreement with Siemens under recommendation of CPM. Technology is submitting a request for pricing proposal, and that's RFPP as justification for a single-source award of this program solution. Next slide. The RFPP number P49632 at a contract value of $1,176,088.87. Your approval will allow for the replacement of aging and unreliable wiring infrastructure, as well as the placement of new IP-based call boxes, which include audio and video capability at MARTA's Lindbergh City Center parking decks. As a result, this effort will provide reliable and consistent emergency access to MARTA's police via new high-performing intercom call boxes located throughout our city center parking structures. Siemens was identified as the ideal resource for this effort due to their familiarity with MARTA's parking deck layout and system configuration as the current vendor supporting our call boxes and equipment. Their ability to save time and money by removing the need to procure a project survey and architectural design, as well as maintaining Siemens' core equipment. Next slide. The projected timeline for this project is 6 months to begin in January of 2022 and end around June of 2022. The cost for this 6-month effort is for the intercom boxes themselves, which is $997,634.65, and the cost for the cabling, which is $178,454.22, for again that grand total of $1,176,088.87. Next slide. In conclusion, I seek your approval authorizing the general manager or his delegate with the ability to initiate a single source contractual agreement with Siemens, again that's RFPP number P49632, at a contract value of $1,176,088.87 using local capital funds for fiscal year 2022. Next slide. Thank you. May I answer any questions for you?
All right, first, can I get a motion approving? Second?
Move for approval, Pond.
Okay. Get a second? Okay, Ms. Abdul Salam, seconded. Okay, discussion? Mr.
I
Pond?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Might be unfair to throw this at you, but how many call boxes? You've got 8 stations, that's about $250,000 per station. I'm just curious how many call boxes are we
So-
talking about for $900,000?
Mr. Pond, I'm glad you asked because I do have that answer. It's approximately 300 call boxes spread across those stations and/or parking lots for those structures.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd.
Who are we calling?
We're calling MARTA Police through 911, but it would be to MARTA's Police.
So it's a physical phone that we pick up and,
Well, actually, it's a box that has, and you may have seen some of the strobe, that has a strobe light, blue strobe light on the front with a gray box, red call button. You press that button. These new boxes will have video capability as well as the intercom capability, which would connect you directly with MARTA's call center, police call center.
what does that mean, digital capability?
So digital capability, so through the cabling, we are now trying to lean more towards voice over IP and have a direct connection from those phone boxes. So digitally, it's the video capability, which is an upgrade to these call boxes, as well as the audio capability.
But the communication then is from me as an individual with the MARTA police,
Correct.
like a 911 call?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, yes, Ms. Abdul?
Are these the same, I guess, type of boxes that the patrons would use inside the station and we need to get help at the station? Or is that something different? We just pick it up, we don't have to dial.
Well, those are actually, they're a combination of those, but those are actually phones or handheld phones that you pick up within the station. These are more what you would see in various other parking. I think they have them at the different shopping centers, Lennox, things of that nature. So very similar to those, that they're actual boxes that you don't have to pick up a receiver.
Okay.
You just hit the button,
Okay,
and that connection is established.
thank you.
All right, Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, I just have one quick question. Do you have any data about how often these emergency boxes are used, like on a monthly basis or annual basis?
We don't have utilization on the boxes, but we do inspections on a monthly basis of those boxes, and that's how we determine operational effectiveness of those boxes. But I don't have data on how many times they have been used individually.
Will this new equipment allow for that type of information?
It's possible. I would say I think we'd have to sit down and noodle on the best way to do that. But just from a dispatch perspective, that connectivity, I think it's possible for us to be able to get that type of data from how many calls are received into the call center at the police station.
Chief wants to speak.
Chief Breyer.
Good morning, Chief Career. Yes, we can get that information. I don't have it in front of me, but we can check with our 911 center, and we can give you a printout of all those calls.
Frequently, people are
It's
actually.
not
using
very
it.
frequent.
It's not? Okay, great. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, so this kind of came out of a discussion with our partners here at Lindbergh. A lot of those parking decks are being utilized by residents and customers in the Lindbergh shopping area. So what we did, there were some concerns about some public safety issues. So we partnered with the Atlanta Police Department. We have a joint bicycle detail that they operate in the Lindbergh area along where these parking decks are also located. They started about a month ago, and there's 6 of them that operate every day. So we're trying to assist our neighbors to make them feel safer in the area too. So it's a great partnership. I think we'll continue it for a while.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I do have one. I understand that this is a single source contract, and once again, I'm aware, but I want to make sure the board is aware of why we only have one vendor that's utilizing this particular service. Can you share that with us?
Yes, sir. And the reason why we're doing that, and again, that's because one, Siemens is the actual current vendor that's responsible for the care and feeding of those boxes. They have a familiarity with our parking structures and our decks and understand what it takes to actually correct or make any non-functional boxes functional. So it's really because of that current relationship, and there's an extension of the current relationship that we have with them.
Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Any other comments from the board? Hearing none, I call the question. Can we vote on the resolution? All right, resolution has been passed. Thank you very much, Mr. Kirby. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you all.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for transit and digital advertising services, RFP P48265. Jennifer Janodo Wright, Senior Director of Marketing and Sales.
Good morning. Thank you. Make sure you can hear me. Good morning, Chairman Fryson, members of the committee, members of MARTA leadership, Mr. Greenwood. Today, I'm here requesting permission to enter into a contract to award the Transit and Digital Advertising Services, RFP P48265 to Intersection Media. Next slide, please. So just want to start by giving you a few highlights of this RFP. So it includes all of our advertising spaces in our rail stations, as well as our rolling stock, so our buses, rail cars, streetcars, and paratransit vans. Just to distinguish this contract, it is different from the shelter contract, which includes all of our shelter advertising as well as maintenance. That contract is due to expire next December, so I'll be coming back to the board for approval to move ahead with that contract. So this is everything except the shelters. It is a revenue-generating contract, so we ask the vendors to provide a percentage of revenue share to MARTA, as well as a minimum annual guarantee. The base term is 10 years, and there are 2 one-year options if we choose to exercise those. It also includes, which we're very excited about, the installation of 200 new digital shelters at our rail stations at the vendor's cost. I think most of you are aware that advertising has been moving very rapidly over the years, and digital is really the format that people are looking for. It allows for more flexibility. It allows for the ads to be based on location. It is also cheaper to produce and easier to maintain and update. So we're really excited to have that, and have that addition at no cost to MARTA. We also added a clause into this contract to allow for any residual effect of COVID-19, or if we are to have anything similar to that going forward, as we now know that's part of our new reality. Also, a couple of other exciting additions are the new rail cars. Those will be equipped, again, with digital screens, which is a departure from what we have right now, which is the paper, printed, labor-intensive screens. So again, very excited about having this new advertising medium to sell. And we also have 60 electric vehicle charging stations at 9 of our stations. Those are also included as new inventory in this new contract. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to talk you through a little bit about our procurement process. The notice was sent to 5 bidders in the middle of June. We then went ahead and extensively advertised this RFP. From the ads, 55 firms received the online solicitation or purchased the CD. We held a pre-bid conference in the end of June, and there were 15 companies that attended that. By the time of the proposal deadline, we received 2 proposals, one from Intersection Media LLC and one from Outfront Media. Intersection Media is the organization that the SEC, after careful consideration, has selected and is presenting to you today for your review and approval. And Outfront Media is the current vendor of the current advertising contract as well as the prior advertising contract. Next slide, please. So just want to kind of give you some insight into what we looked at as an SEC and what was our scoring criteria. Obviously, industry experience is very important because we need a company that knows how to do this, that has worked with larger agencies, that can hit the ground running, because this is a revenue-generating contract. We want to earn revenue as quickly and as fast as possible. So we had 35% weight to that. But we also, and some of you who have been on our board for a while have been involved in conversations where we've talked about the nature of our ads and how they look and how that may or may not impact our brand. So we also wanted to allow for some consideration of other advertising or non-advertising features as well in this revenue-generating contract. So we awarded that 20%. Of course, the capacity of the firm is also important. A lot of the sales on this would be national as well as local. So we have that at 10%. And then with it being revenue generating, we had the cost at 35%. Next slide, please. So to talk through our evaluation and how the SEC came to the decision that we came to. When we looked at industry experience and the capacity of the proponent's national and local sales organization, both proposals were very similar. They both have been in the industry for a very long time. They both have large national contracts. So the other 2 elements where we saw a distinction was on the advertising program creativity as well as the cost. So just to talk through some of the highlights with the advertising program creativity, what we clearly saw demonstrated in the proposal from Intersection, as well as what we know they have done in other systems, is their ability to really leverage our advertising space in a way that not only allows us to generate revenue, but also positively enhances the MARTA brand. They have the ability to work with national brands beyond just the advertising space. Some of their advertising proposals were highly creative, where they really utilized the space, so it kind of almost started to look like artwork more than advertising, and was so very engaging and would really enhance the experience for our customers. So we felt it would allow us to make money, but also really improve the look and the feel for the current ads, that our customers experience as they use our system. They also were very advanced with technology and demonstrated a lot of technology integration that already exists. Very importantly, they have a content management system, a CMS system, which allows you to instantly send digital ads straight to the digital screens. This is really important to us, not just with the new screens that we'll have in our rail stations, but also with our rail cars moving to digital. So the ability to easily upload ads quickly and effectively becomes very critical. So all those technical innovations were very attractive to us. They also had other technologies, that information such as any service issues that we may have or service updates. In the previous presentation, we were talking about the changes to our service with our next markup. So information like that we could actually utilize this technology and take it straight to our customers' mobile phones. So all of that was very exciting to us, and it's all stuff that they already do in other systems. They also had a lot of enhanced communications as far as the way they work with their transit partners. The COO is actually the sponsor of this contract, so we would have direct access to him, as well as the full Intersection team. They have other programs in place that will allow our frontline employees to easily contact them if there were issues such as graffiti on an ad. It's sort of like a one-stop shop, just very seamless communications. They had a lot of other ideas and initiatives, but one of the other ones that stood out was a D&I initiative where they allocate a percentage of the ad space at a much lower rate to minorities and women-owned businesses in the community. We really liked this idea because we not only serve the community, you know, we are part of the community, and we felt this engagement really enhances what we bring to the communities that we serve. And so those were just some of the features that we really appreciated and recognized that they would not only help us make our advertising look better, but would also allow us to engage with other brands that we maybe haven't engaged with before, and basically increase the level and the nature of the ads that we have on our system. And then lastly, the costs. Next slide, please. So just want to go through the costs in just a little bit more detail. As I mentioned, part of the contract, we also asked the vendors to provide a minimum annual guarantee, which we call a MAG, as well as a revenue share. When you look at this slide, you will see that Outfront's minimum guarantee is higher than Intersections. The minimum guarantee is the dollar amount that the company agrees that they will pay if they do not make high enough sales. So it's kind of like the lowest number that you would get in the contract. We know that a vendor is not going to propose a minimum guarantee that's higher than the revenue they can generate, because a vendor does not want to be in a contract where they are in a negative. This is to generate revenue. We also expected Outfront's minimum guarantee to be higher because they have the current contract and they had the prior contract, so they understand the market. So the numbers that they are proposing are really numbers that you can look at and say, this would be the absolute bare minimum number that we could expect to earn on revenue. So what's really critical about this contract, being that it's revenue generating, is that revenue share. You'll see that on this contract, Outfront proposed a 68% revenue share for bus and a 64% revenue share for rail, and Intersection proposed a 70% revenue share for both. I'm looking at just going from year 4 onwards, because in years 1 to 3, we do not have a MAG on rail, because that's when we will be installing the digital screens. So years 4 onwards are really the years that we're going to really maximize the revenue potential on this contract. I can go to the next slide, please. Just to put a little bit more meat on the numbers, we took a projection. So looking at the current contract, the gross revenue, the lowest gross revenue, is about 46% over the MAG. This is really, really conservative because, again, we know that the digital screens that we will have in our stations, as well as the new rail cars and the digital screens, are going to make this contract so much more lucrative than previously, as well as some of the advertising creativity that I mentioned on the previous slide. But just sharing a conservative estimate, you can see that that 6% increase of the revenue share on the Intersection side really is what leverages us the maximum numbers. These numbers are very low, so very conservative, so we would expect at the end of this contract to far exceed this number, but we just wanted to show you an example of why the SEC, after careful consideration, all determined that that increase in the revenue share was really what's going to net MARTA the maximum revenue in this contract. Next slide, please. And so that concludes my presentation. And again, we ask permission to enter into a contract with Intersection Media that will allow us to continue to generate revenue when the current contract expires end of December this year. And I now take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I first get a motion and second?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Pond.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Mr. Snyder has second. Questions from the board? Mr. Pond?
When I originally saw your analysis, I was very surprised that you went with one versus the other, but thank you for sharing those revenue assumptions. I think that really cleared things up. I know the answer to this question, but I would just like to ask anyway, is why 10 years? And it's for the cost of the signage, I assume. But.
Yes, thank you for asking that. Yes, so we did extend it beyond the previous contract terms because we know we need to allow opportunity for the vendor to recuperate their costs, the labor and the costs involved in the materials to have the new digital signs, the 200 signs. So you're correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Snyder?
I have a question, not specifically about these advertising initiatives, but I was curious, because we're going into digital displays and we're putting them on our buses and the trains and inside the stations. Have we ever looked at selling or leasing external space for standalone billboards that also can generate advertising revenue on MARTA property?
It's interesting you say that. So on the digital screens that we have at our stations, that is something that we want to look at to see how we can just maximize that space. We actually have another contract that's looking at billboards as well as using some of MARTA's assets for billboard space. So that is definitely something that we are looking at because we see that there is opportunity in that.
If I could just jump in here real quick, Melissa Mullinex. I think maybe also what you're asking is about external billboards like on overpasses, right, where the trains run.
Right,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
on our own,
Yeah.
MARTA-owned property.
So
right.
we have looked at that. It's actually, we would need a change in legislation by the city to allow us to do that. We're working on that. Peter may know some about this, our about to be new chief counsel. The city created an area that's entertainment,
Right.
arts and entertainment district downtown where they allow these digital billboards.
Yep.
We would need something along those lines. But we are going to work with the new administration and the new council around a whole new approach to street furniture advertising. I think it will accrue to their benefit too, because once it's digital and it's up there, you can use it for all kinds of things. Chicago's been doing this where they have curfew information up. They have when there's a major accident. So,
Right.
But that's going to require some collaboration with our city partners.
I understand, yeah, there are height restrictions and all kinds of
Yeah,
other things
right.
like that, but, okay, I'm just curious, thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Is that just a city of Atlanta thing? Because we have other cities that would be involved in this also. I'm just wondering, is that a problem in Atlanta or just everywhere?
I think it's everywhere, but Peter may know more.
Peter Andrews, Legal Department. Yes, every jurisdiction would have their own zoning restrictions on exactly what we do typically. Size, location is what they usually just try and restrict at this point, not exactly what the message is. But the district that Melissa was mentioning is one in Atlanta that it goes beyond that and allows more vibrant, different size and different types and character of the signage, where we probably would be able to take a better advantage of. But other jurisdictions all have their own restrictions in their zoning code on where you can place billboards and signage of that nature.
And I say only that we are talking to the Atlanta folks about it because when I guess it was Out Front who several years back came to us and said, we'd like to put these billboards, and they identified locations where they think that it would be a significant revenue generator, and they were all inside the city of Atlanta. So that's why we were talking with them.
Okay.
But if you'd like to see a big billboard over right there by the Decatur School, right there.
Well,
we can-
actually, it's down at East Lake or at Avondale, and,
East Lake, I think they would like Bright Lights Big City billboard.
well, actually, I had that conversation with Frank Rucker a long time ago about putting some sort of, welcome to Avondale Estates on those bridges. There are two bridges, one at East Lake, welcome to Decatur.
Yeah,
I wasn't talking about advertising at the time. I was just talking about making the bridges more attractive and certainly maybe a
yep.
revenue enhancement from some sort of advertising. But those locations, especially Decatur and Avondale, would be ideal for public service announcements and those
Yes.
kind of things along that road there,
Yep.
College Avenue. So,
Okay, so we'll add that.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ron, I want to mention one other thing.
Yes.
I know Andrew will probably be familiar with this, but there are lots of restrictions on multi-message boards, digital boards. They can't be within 5,000 feet of another one and things like that. So for purposes of our analysis, we'll have to keep all those sort of geographic and distance restrictions in mind. But yeah, it's definitely an opportunity.
Okay. All right, Ms. Abdul-Salam?
Were you finished? You go ahead.
Yes.
You finished? Okay, Ms. Jennifer, we recently installed and unpackaged some new signs at the train stations. Will this be interactive with those signs, or will it be totally standalone and separate?
These would be totally standalone and separate and would focus on advertising.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you, and we appreciate it very much, Mr. Wright. I'd like to call this a question to order. Call the question? Okay. All right. Can we vote? All right, the resolution has passed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. All right. The next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of revenue shares of renewable natural gas services, IFB B47835. Kevin Hurley, Deputy of CFO and Treasurer. You have the floor.
Yes, sir. Thank you and good morning, Chairman Frierson, members of the Business Management Committee, Mr. Greenwood and Mr. Srinath. I'm Kevin Hurley, and I'm here to present a resolution to award a contract for revenue shares of renewable natural gas services, IFB B47835. Next slide, please. Our agenda for today includes an introduction, some background into the program and transaction, the mechanics of the transaction, the procurement process that we went through, and subsequent board actions today. Next slide. MARTA finance staff, through efforts to identify methods to reduce our energy costs, discovered a federal renewable natural gas tax credit program. By participating in this program, it would allow MARTA to reduce our energy costs by generating revenues through renewable energy credits while promoting the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and retaining reliable quality natural gas for our vehicles. Next slide. By order of background, in the 1980s, the federal government mandated that oil refiners begin using ethanol, corn-based ethanol, in our fuels. Subsequently, in 2005, the Environmental Protection Agency expanded the program to include multiple methane sources, and this established the Renewable Identification Number Program for biofuels. Currently, in the United States, about 10% of gasoline and diesel fuel are comprised of renewable fuels. Next slide. I wanted to walk through the mechanics of the transaction utilizing a diagram here. So on the top left, you see the renewable natural gas producer. And this is typically a landfill. And then on the bottom circle, you see the compressed natural gas user, which in our instance is MARTA. We utilize the natural gas in our vehicles. On the larger circle to the right, you'll see the RIN generator, Renewable Identification Number Generator. This is a middleman who links the volumes produced by the renewable natural gas producer to the volumes consumed by the CNG user. And when they do this, they create the RIN number, Renewable Identification Number. This number is then used to track the biofuel use and production throughout the system. Next slide, please. The next step in the transaction is for the RIN generator to actually sell the credit in the open market to a buyer who's interested in purchasing them. These buyers are typically large oil refineries who have quotas that have been established by the federal government as part of the ethanol program. So they can procure credits from the landfill gas and MARTA RIN biofuels to support their quotas. The second box there describes how MARTA will receive their revenue. The RIN generator will agree to pay MARTA a certain percentage of the gross sales to support their production with our volumes. Next slide, please. Now to get into the procurement process. This contract will be for 5 years with 2 one-year options. MARTA released an invitation for bids on July 19th, 2021, and held a pre-bid conference on August 5th, 2021. Questions were due back to MARTA on August 11th, 2021, and we had a subsequent bid opening on September 24th, 2021. We received 3 bids, one from U.S. Gaines, TrueStar Energy, and Trillium Transportation Fuels. Trillium Transportation Fuels was deemed non-responsive as they had submitted multiple bids. Next slide. The winning bid was received from U.S. Gaines. For the first 5 years, MARTA will receive 6.5% of gross sales, and for option years 6 and 7, MARTA would receive 7% of gross sales. The current revenue estimate to MARTA is based on the use of 1 million decatherms of natural gas. That's typically what MARTA consumes throughout an annual rate of operations. To dollarize this would mean in the first 5 years of the program, MARTA would receive $1.3 million per year, and the final option years 6 and 7, MARTA would receive approximately $1.4 million per year based on current pricing. The U.S. Gaines bid was considerably higher than that of TrueStar Energy, the second place bid. The significant difference prompted staff to conduct a thorough review of U.S. Gaines. The results were that U.S. Gaines is a financially strong organization and has an excellent DMB credit report and is a leader in the RIN generator market. This review helped alleviate any concerns staff had with U.S. Gaines' bid. Next slide, please. This concludes my presentation, and I respectfully request approval of the resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of revenue shares of renewable natural gas services, IFB B47835.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Can I get a motion?
Move for approval.
Move. Second. Okay, Mr. Floyd is seconded. Questions from the board?
Kevin, was the Trillium bid non-responsive just simply because they submitted 2 bids or multiple bids?
That's my understanding from procurement, yes, sir.
So were they opened?
Yes, they were opened. They also were not, they were also a lower bid than U.S. Gaines.
Okay, I'd be curious as to know if in fact it was just simply because they submitted 2 different bids. I mean, it's just interesting to me that they get kicked out because they submitted multiple bids. And
Good afternoon. My name is Jacqueline Holland, Director of Contracts, Procurement, and Materials. The bid instructions did inform bidders that they were only to submit 1 bid. Those are our instructions, so if they were deemed non-responsive because they submitted more than 1 bid.
okay, and just one quick question. If that's true, why were they opened? I mean, wouldn't it be
I would need to go back and look. I'm not sure if it was
And this is
packaged.
just a personal
yeah.
thing. We can talk about this
Yeah.
later. This is just, I'm interested in
It
this.
could have been
so.
packaged in one package. I'm not sure. I can check
Okay,
and
all right.
find out. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. I know this seems to me a very complex way of selling back excessive renewable gas into the marketplace, but that's how we operate. It sounds like something that we will come out in a very favorable position as we move through this. But I do understand a little bit more since I've heard it a second time.
Yes, sir. And, you know, interesting to note, you all received a briefing in the last meeting with Karen about the sustainability plan. There's a couple of pieces that finance is working on that are going to assist her in that sustainability plan to go for the platinum rather than, you know, we have the gold. The next step is the platinum.
Okay.
You know, reduction of greenhouse gases is helpful to her efforts. So we're working with her to incorporate that going forward as well.
Okay. Great. Mr. Pine?
I'll defer to our esteemed legal counsels to my right, but when I'm looking around the room, we have 4 members here. I'm not sure we have a quorum for a vote, or do we? I'm not. Is it 4? Okay.
Okay.
Apologize.
Okay, we do have sufficient board members. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Snyder?
I just have one quick one. Thank you for the presentation.
Yes, sir.
It's very informative. I'm curious about the RIN credit marketplace. Do the valuations of RIN credits, do they fluctuate depending on the market?
Yes, sir, very much so. When we were originally looking at doing this, we've had some delays to make sure that we did it right because this is the first time we've done this. And when we were initially looking at the pricing, we were thinking we'd get about $800,000 a year. So there is volatility in that market. Current pricing, it has gone in our favor. Certainly, it could be lower than that.
Is our current revenue estimate based on our current RIN credit value of the market?
That's correct, yes, sir. It's
Okay.
based on the volume that we are producing and the current pricing in the RIN market. Yes, sir.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
All right, any other questions from the board members? Go here and then I'll call the question. All right, the resolution has passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley, appreciate it very much. The other items are other matters which are on the agenda, which is FY 2022 August financial highlights and financial performance indicators. Please look at that. It does show some favorable trends here in our financial situation. And then also there's a summary letter from utilization of the GSA and state contracts, which is directed to the board members. A letter directed to the board's members for information. Any other matters we need to bring before the board?
No, Mr. Flores.
Okay, all right. Hearing no other information, then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, board members. Appreciate it.